Welcome to Am I the AH story from Twixeyes My Crack. Here someone steals OP's lunch daily, and OP accuses a co-worker of stealing his lunch, leading to a confrontation in the office. AITA for hiding my lunch at work and reporting a co-worker for stealing it? For the past 2 months, I have been cooking meals at home and taking my lunch to work. I work in an office where we all have our own cubicles, and the layout is large enough to be considered an office. In the past 2 weeks, someone kept stealing my lunch, even though I had my name and extension on it, and went as far as to wash out the containers and leave a thank you note. I wrote an office email, because I didn't know who it was, asking them not to steal my lunch, but it did not work. So I saw a couple of my colleagues coming in with a large lunch pail and leaving it in their cubicle. When I asked one of them, she said that's how you get to keep your lunch because the lunch pirates will steal your food otherwise. So I did the same thing. I bought a large lunch pail and like 6 of those blue ice packs that keep food cold, and now keep my food in my cubicle on a 3M hanger under my office sweater. An hour ago, I went to lunch, heated up my food, and sat down to eat. This co-worker, we don't work in the same department, so I don't really know her, asked me if I came in late. I said no, why? She said because my lunch was not in the fridge. I said it's because I keep it in my cubicle now because I'm tired of people stealing my food. The microwave pings, and I get my food out and proceed to eat. She put a styrofoam plate next to me, and I'm looking at her. She says, "Well, you can split your lunch with me because I don't have any." I looked her dead in the face and asked her if she was the one stealing my lunch. She said she didn't steal, she borrowed. I said, "Borrowed? So when are you going to pay me back? I'm not welfare. You didn't bring your lunch. We are literally in the middle of downtown. You can literally throw a pebble and hit an eatery. I work just like you. And if you didn't bring your food, you better go buy some because I am not sharing, period." I closed my food containers and was making my way back to my cubicle to report her to HR. She called me selfish. I told her she was an entitled thief, and I would be letting everyone know. So I reported her to HR, my manager, and her manager. I got 2 emails from people I don't know saying I should not have reported her because I don't know her situation. I emailed them back and told them they, nor she, know my situation, which is pretty good, but that's not the point. And anyone who is wearing Tom Ford pumps should literally not be stealing anyone's food. So, AITA for reporting her and not wanting to share, and AITA for keeping my food in my cubicle. It seems that OP is not an AH because there are clear indications that OP's colleague has been stealing his food. If she wasn't, how would she know that his food was not in the fridge? So, OP did the right by reporting to the HR. So, I would give OP 0 out of 5 scores on the AH scale. As for OP's colleague financial situation, if she had any problem, she could have asked OP or others' colleague for help, but stealing cannot be justified. So, she is an AH, and I would rate her 2.5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on the next story from Tim's third account, where OP wants to break up with his girlfriend because she turned off her location, got injured, and didn't tell OP when they had decided to go on a date. AITA for wanting to break up with my girlfriend after she turned off her location, got injured, and didn't tell me? I, 25M, didn't hear anything from my girlfriend, 22F, all day yesterday, even though we had planned for her to come over in the evening. When she didn't show up, I started to worry. We share our Find My location for safety, especially since she often takes public transport alone late at night. I noticed her location was turned off, which was unusual and only added to my concern. As I hadn't heard from her, I reached out to mutual friends to see if they had seen her. One friend mentioned they'd seen her at her hobby activity in the evening, where she was with her mother and some guy. The friend didn't mention anything unusual, certainly not an injury, so I assumed she was fine. However, I was still puzzled as to why she hadn't contacted me or shown up. I tried calling her parents, who were annoyed I'd woken them up and didn't give me any useful information except for "she's asleep here at home, now good night." This morning, after a sleepless night, her mother finally got back to me and told me my girlfriend had injured her leg at work, possibly a broken leg, and that she was on strong medication, which is why she was asleep. Apparently, a coworker had taken her to the ER right after the accident. But none of this is making sense to me. If she'd injured her leg so badly, I don't understand how she was able to go to her hobby as my friend saw yesterday. Plus, it was this same co-worker she mentioned before, the one who'd picked her up from my place for work without me knowing. That was already strange because I've always told her she can ask me for a ride, and I'm flexible in the mornings. This happened like 4 days ago. The co-worker pickup. Not the whole thing, which happened yesterday. With her location still turned off and no communication from her, I feel like I'm the last to know anything. I'm seriously considering breaking up with her over this, as soon as she reaches out to me. If I were in an accident, my first request would be to let her know, and I'd hope for the same in return. AITA for feeling hurt by her lack of communication, and the fact that she prioritized telling everyone but me? Edit. She still has our pictures on her socials, our anniversary on her WhatsApp status. That's a common thing to do. OP is not an AH for feeling hurt because of the lack of communication from her girlfriend. This is really weird behavior, but there is some hint of ghosting as well, given the fact that she has her location turned off and was seen by her colleague at her hobby activity. If she was seriously injured, how could she be engaging in her hobby activity with her family? Things are very unclear and unusual, but breaking up without any communication would be an impulsive decision. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 and OP's girlfriend 0.5 for not having proper communication with her boyfriend. Let's now move on to the next story from True-Strawberry-9409. AITA for refusing to cancel my vacation after my brother demanded I pay for his emergency surgery instead. So here's the situation. I, 30F, have been planning a 2-week vacation to Europe with my partner for the past year. We've both saved up a lot of money for this trip, and it's a big deal for us because we've never been on a major vacation together before. The flights, hotels, everything has already been paid for. Last week, my brother, 35M, called me in a panic saying he needs emergency surgery for a dental issue. It's not life-threatening, but his tooth infection is bad, and it needs to be dealt with soon. He doesn't have insurance, long story involving bad financial decisions, and the procedure is going to cost about 10K USD. He asked me to loan him the money, but there's no way I have an extra 10K USD lying around after paying for this vacation. When I told him that, he got mad and said I should cancel my trip to help him, since family comes first. He even suggested I ask for refunds on the flights and hotels, as though that would magically solve the problem. I told him I felt bad for his situation, but I wasn't going to cancel a trip we'd been planning for a year over his poor financial choices, especially when this isn't a life or death situation. He lost it, called me selfish, accused me of abandoning him in his time of need, and got our mom involved. Now my mom is pressuring me to cancel and help him out, saying it's just a vacation, and I can always reschedule. But I don't think it's fair that I should be expected to sacrifice something I've worked hard for, because my brother can't handle his own responsibilities. AITA? Is he lying about the cost to drain me off my money or something? OP is not an AH for refusing to cancel her vacation and give money to her brother, because she is not responsible for her brother's bad decisions in the past, and now for his surgery. Another point is that this is not a very serious surgery. If it were a serious one, he could ask OP for help, but here it seems that OP's brother just wanted to exhaust her and drain her of her money. In other words, he is being an AH, and I would give him 2 out of 5 scores on the AH scale, and OP deserves a 0. Let's now jump on the next story from yesterday, 3710. AITA for ending my engagement because of his demands about our prenup. I, 37F, recently received a lump sum for a career project that turned into a whole company. I entered into an agreement with a company that has been reselling my services throughout licensing and long-term corporate JVs. When I signed the paperwork, I believed I had the opportunity to build a financial future without it affecting my relationship. However, this has not been the case, and I'm very put off, to the point of breaking off our engagement. We've been together for 4 years. I met him on the last leg of my struggle to achieve what has become my life's work motivation. This project has been all-consuming, and aside from that, I only had time for my family. I have very good friends, but everyone is busy. I didn't date or go out. When Sean, 43M, came along, I was swept off my feet because I wasn't expecting to find someone that I liked so much. We shared the same sense of humor, and I became really attracted to him, both emotionally and physically. Sean is divorced. He has average office assistant skills and works for a small government agency. Our salary gap was not a huge deal as I invested a lot in my project. So whatever money I kept for myself went to my non-negotiable priorities. I take care of my family and pay bills. He did have hobbies that he spent time on, but when I met him, he was in between jobs and had to wait 4 months until he became active at his new job at the agency. We were both tight on money. I was very happy to have a guy who didn't pressure me to wear certain styles. I'm more of a flats and comfy clothes lady. When my ex before him demanded that I look trendy and said things that nullified my self-esteem. I knew he was on food stamps, very briefly, and chalked it up to a bad situation that was temporary. There was huge mutual acceptance. We tried to start a small consulting company, but it didn't work out. I noticed that he wasn't ready to co-manage, and after a long conversation, we mutually decided to call it off. We had been talking about marriage for a while, and when he proposed, the subject of a prenup was no surprise, as we had already agreed on having one. Even if I had nothing, I see it as a way to protect ourselves and each other from potential situations. I'm in a niche market that deals with loss prevention, and I've seen people getting into lawsuits. We had drafted a plan but had some tense moments. He closed off at the lawyer's office and created a tense environment during our second meeting. Nothing that we had agreed on was getting followed through, and he kept asking for things and raising the bar. He got his own lawyer, which would have been okay except that he never told me, and his attorney showed up, and I didn't even know he'd hired one. We had to pause the prenup after he almost bit my head off outside of my lawyer's office when I refused to give his daughter shares of my existing company. That's a no-go for me, and I'd rather stay unmarried. I built that company to leave something to my children. I'm the only parent looking out for them, as my ex has been kind of a deadbeat. Sean wasn't even in the picture when I started it. I will not create a trust fund for his child either, like he asked. None of these requests had been previously discussed, but came up once his lawyer showed up. I did agree to help her financially, give her an allowance, help pay for a car, pay full health insurance, contribute to her college housing, and contribute to her education. She has a successful mom, so my logic is that she already has someone willing to give her a good start in life, since Sean isn't financially able. His daughter is an adult, 18F, while my kids are in grade school, and I need to make sure they are taken care of, while she's already at an age where she can get a job. I offered to contribute to a fund for her first home, but it seems like nothing I offered was good enough. I love his kid, but I didn't raise her, and she will never see me as her mom, and I respect that. Her mom's family owns a business, and her mom owns her home in a very good area. It's not like she depends on me to have a good life. I wanted it to be fair since her mom, Sean, and I could contribute. So Sean and I had an argument, because he sent me a breakdown of how much I'm supposed to make off my business over the next few years. I lost my temper because it felt like a gotcha situation. I confronted him about my own kids and asked what he would contribute to them. He went silent, so I said I wanted their names on the deed to a piece of land that he owns but hasn't been able to develop because he doesn't have the funds. He was surprised and accused me of trying to dilute his inheritance to his daughter and being generally unfair since she has less than what my kids will end up having. I just wanted him to see my point, but I made things worse. We used to be able to talk outside of the prenup, but now if I don't get his sarcasm, it's his dry behavior that's driving me crazy. He said he's surprised at my greed and accused me of othering his child. I'm trying to figure out if I came across as a bad stepmother. Also, I'm not ruling out helping all our kids start their own businesses if they want to, but I can't guarantee its success since we are not there yet. Canceling the engagement sounded like the most sensible decision, and I'm astonished this is actually happening. I don't know how to navigate. His last messages have been very hurtful, and he says I'm showing my true colors and told me thank you for my dishonesty about how I truly feel about his daughter. My best friend is pissed and threatens to put him on blast if he keeps this up. I'm confused since I didn't expect our relationship to end like this. AITA? Update. I broke up with him since the whole deal felt like a bitter divorce rather than a step towards married life. OP is not an AH for ending the engagement, because Sean's demands are unreasonable and selfish, particularly insisting on giving his daughter shares of OP's company. Sean should be grateful for the help OP has been offering for his daughter, but he is not, and is behaving entitled. So, he is an AH for being selfish, and I would give him 2 out of 5 on the scale. As for OP, she deserves 0 out of 5 on the scale. Let's move to another story from Budget-Fishing 7420. AITA for refusing full custody of my daughter after my husband asked for a divorce. I, 31F, have been together with my husband Alex, 33M, for 7 years, married for 4 years. Alex was always really excited about the prospect of children from the beginning of our relationship. I was always on the fence. I've seen how hard single moms have it. I promised myself I'd never be in that position. Plus, I work as a software engineer. I love my career, and I didn't want to give it up to be a mom. After Alex and I got married, those fears went away. We were very much in love. I felt safe with him. I told him my fears, and he said all the right things to make them vanish. So we tried for a baby and had our daughter Ramona 2 years after we got married. The pregnancy and first year with the baby was extremely hard on me. I had multiple health problems during and after the pregnancy that were life-threatening and altered my body permanently. I was disabled and nearly died once in the 6 months after I gave birth. And during this time, my husband grew distant and became angry frequently when we'd speak. I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital and was unable to work, so a lot of the baby care went to him during this time. It was all I could do to stay alive and get better, being separated from my daughter and husband so much. Eventually, I did get better enough to help more with the baby, but after I was discharged from the hospital, he barely spoke to me. I want to clarify early that at no time did I ever neglect our daughter if I was able to care for her. I leaned on him a lot during this period, but I was also fighting for my health and my life so that I could continue to be there for her. If I had pushed myself too hard, I would have made it worse, or be dead. We stayed in a state of limbo like this for a while. I was still in recovery, not back to 100% yet, but able to resume a somewhat normal life, and we shared more responsibility with Ramona. I tried talking to him many times over the next 6 months, but it was more of the same thing. He wouldn't speak to me, or he'd get angry in every little thing I did, insist I was making things up and blame me for somehow criticizing him. It was a constant deflection from whatever was bothering him. I got another job about 9 months after the pregnancy, and things seemed to improve for a while, or at least I thought. Not long after Ramona's first birthday, Alex served me with divorce papers. He said he'd fallen out of love with me a long time ago, and he was ready to start anew. I was in shock. Things had started to improve between us, but he explained that was because he'd decided to leave, and he felt less unhappy. It was a Saturday when this happened, so I made sure he was going to be home to care for Ramona for the weekend. Then I packed a bag and left until Sunday evening. I didn't say where I was going, and truthfully, I didn't really go anywhere but drive. I drove 2 states over by the time I stopped. I needed to think. When I got back Sunday evening, he was pissed I'd left him alone with our daughter. He's always seemed really put off any time he had to care for her alone. This time was no exception. I sat him down and very carefully said, "I will grant you a no-contest divorce, but I am not accepting full custody of Ramona." If he was only pissed before, he was explosive now, and everything he hated about me finally came out. That I was a horrible mother, that I wasn't strong enough to even be a mother, that I was too weak to carry a child, and now I was abandoning her. I very calmly stated that I loved her dearly and would not abandon her, that I would pay child support and visit her every other weekend, that I would be there for her in any way I could. But I had been very clear with him when we got married that I would never be a single mom. He became borderline violent at this, grabbing things like he was going to throw them and screaming that I was ruining his life on purpose. I wasn't going to stick around to be talked to like this, so I went and checked on Ramona, gave her a kiss, then grabbed my bag and left again. A couple days later, his mother texted me. He'd left Ramona with her for a few days, and she had some nasty things to say to me. That a mother should never leave her child, etc. I told her it wasn't her business, and that her son doesn't get a free pass to restart his life, because his wife nearly died when she was pregnant, and he became resentful with the responsibility. He's also blown up my phone asking me when I'm going to come back, so you can take your daughter. But I've only replied, "I've already told you what's going to happen here. I love my daughter immensely, and I will be a provider for her. I will always support her, but I won't be her primary parent. So, AITA, OP is not the AH for refusing full custody. She was clear about her boundaries from the start, and despite her health struggles, she hasn't abandoned her daughter. OP is still committed to supporting and being present for her child, but her husband's behavior, lack of communication, and anger make it unreasonable to expect her to take on full custody. She's protecting her well-being while ensuring her daughter remains cared for. Let's now move on to the next story from Boring Man, 1982. AITA for telling my friend to stop mentioning pictures my wife posts. I've got a friend who the last couple of years has turned a bit tatty. He has been wronged by a couple of women in the past couple of years. One left him and got married within 3 months, the other stole a lot of his money. But he seems to have a particular dislike for women selling content, or just generally being confident in how they look. That point brings me on to my wife. She's 39 and we've been together since school. She's a very fit and attractive woman, and her main hobby is pole dancing. She loves it and has been doing it for a few years. She's really good and she loves it so much. It's great to see her really excelling at something and being so passionate about it. She posts a lot of pictures and video of herself pole dancing on accounts that only friends can follow. So it's not like she does this for attention. Even though I've told her if she ever wanted to, I wouldn't mind, as a few of her friends have quite big followings. And sometimes when they do shows, my wife is in the photos and videos and gets a lot of positive comments. At the weekend, I went to my friend's to help him with some DIY, and he asked me if I mind my wife posting what she posts. I said, not at all, it doesn't bother me. He then said, you are part of the problem. Women are getting too much ego, and it's bad enough when it's single women, but married women shouldn't be doing that. I told him, if he's that bothered, then don't look and unfollow her. He said that won't change anything, and it's the culture being created around women getting validation for their bodies or some shit like that. I got a bit wound up at this point and asked him if he'd like to ring my wife and tell her himself. He said no, he was just talking to me man to man, and I need to grow a backbone. I told him I'm not the one with the backbone problem if he can't handle a bit of flesh and gets offended by it, and he's the weak one. I ended up leaving, and a few mutual friends have said that while I was right, he's going through a hard time and is a bit vulnerable to this way of thinking. I personally think that's bullshit, and we need to tell him he's heading down a wrong path. Me and my friend are both 41. I forgot to mention that. TLDR. Friend is heading down a Tate wormhole and said my wife shouldn't be posting pictures of herself pole dancing. I told him to grow up and not be so easily offended. OP is not an AH here for defending his wife's choice to share her passion. Standing up for his wife's autonomy and calling out the behavior is completely justified. OP's friend has a very narrow mind, and his misogynistic behavior is not justifiable. No sensible person would tolerate it. OP's friend is a big AH, so I would give him a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As OP is completely justified, I would give him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Practical Debate 807. AITA for confronting my daughter-in-law about her constant lying and refusing to apologize. I, 56F, have a son, and things have been tense because of his wife, Emily, 28F. I've noticed over the past year that Emily tends to stretch the truth or flat-out lie about things, both big and small. At first, it was little things like saying she couldn't come to family dinners because of work, only to post on social media that she was out with friends. Then it escalated to bigger things. One example that really bothered me happened recently. We were both supposed to attend a charity fundraiser. I was there the entire evening and never saw her. When I later asked if she had made it, she insisted that she had been there the whole time and even said she saw me, but was too busy to come say hi. This wasn't true. I know for a fact she wasn't there. The volunteers list was small, and I definitely would have seen her. We were all in the same room. More recently, she lied about something involving a family event. We were planning a small gathering for my husband's birthday, and Emily told me she'd arranged a cake from his favorite bakery. The day of the party, she showed up empty-handed, claiming they lost the order. When I called the bakery to see what happened, they had no record of any order ever being placed. That was the last straw for me. I pulled her aside later and confronted her about her constant lying. I tried to be calm and respectful, but I told her that her dishonesty was starting to affect how I viewed her and that it was creating tension in the family. She literally messed up my husband's birthday with these lies. She completely denied it and got really upset, saying I was making her out to be a bad person and that I was overreacting. My son got involved and is now angry with me. The whole thing has caused a rift, and now Emily refuses to come to any family gatherings unless I apologize. I feel like I had every right to call her out, and I have nothing to apologize for. AITA here? OP is not an AH for confronting her daughter-in-law about lying, especially when the dishonesty affects family events. However, OP could have approached differently and responsibly, avoiding unnecessary tension. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's daughter-in-law 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from the -Fat-Ninja. AITA for no longer being concerned that my son refuses to deal with me? Let me start this off by saying I love my child. I fought for many years with his mother to be in his life, only to be met with consistent resistance. She honestly didn't care if I was there or not. As long as the child support was paid, I heard nothing from her. I truly believe she did not want me in his life. Planning things on my scheduled visitations and not allowing them to be made up the following weekend got aggravating. When it came to things he wanted to do, I was not going to stop him. I did not mind sacrificing the time. I understand he's going to want to hang out with friends, his girlfriend, and go to family events. I made the biggest mistake by telling her one day that he could come when he wanted. He has friends, a girlfriend, and is a teen. I understand. I was that age once. Let him have fun. This ultimately backfired. After that phone call, I saw him once more, and that was it. To this day, I do not know what was said to him, and that was 7 years ago. I don't have his phone number or email. To be clear, he's now an adult, and I still don't know his phone number. He refuses to see or speak to me or anyone on my side of the family. She let him talk to my mother before she passed, so she could say goodbye, only to turn around and say, I kept it from him, knowing I told her long before. I ended up having a conversation with a friend about this, as she had asked me about it. I told her, I've yet to hear from him, and am not worried about it. I've stopped worrying about things I can't control long ago. She asked me a question. How would you feel if he never bothered with you for the rest of your life, never let you know if you were a grandparent, and just never let you know anything about his life? I told her I had thought about that before, and to be honest, it wouldn't bother me. I've been estranged for 7 years now. I've missed all the major milestones, missed seeing him become an adult, and at this point, I have no idea who he is. He is basically a stranger to me. At some point, you accept that this is your situation, and there's not much you can do. After a while, you stop caring because you realize you'll drive yourself crazy and keep yourself depressed over something you have zero control over. This answer did not go over well. Let me state this first. She's married and has children. I believe this will add context to why she responded the way she did, which I understood and respected, as we all have our views, but I do not agree with. She said that I have become heartless, cold, and she can't believe I'd think that way after all the years of fighting I did. She said she never in a million years would think I would have thought like that. You are a parent. You are supposed to never stop fighting no matter how many walls you have to climb. I'm truly shocked and disappointed that you'd think like this. I love you. We've been good friends for many years, but I can't agree with your line of thought on this. So Reddit, what do you think, AITA, for my view of this situation with my son? OP is not an AH here because he had been trying to be the part of the, but he was always met with rejection. Now, if he has decided to move on, he must not be blamed. At least he is not an AH, so I would give him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and his ex-wife deserves at least 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. Now, let's move on to the next story from major_opposite_9592. AITA, for calling my stepmom selfish during family therapy. I'm 17F in family therapy with my dad and stepmom. My dad wanted us to talk through our problems because my stepmom has been really upset lately that I have shut her out of my life in a pretty big way, and she just wants to be closer. My mom died when I was 5, and I have 2 older brothers who are 20 and 23. My stepmom moved in when I was 8, and she and my dad got married when I was almost 11. We always got along okay, but I never thought of her as a second mom or the strongest mom figure in my life. My mom left videos for each of us. My dad got some birthday ones and a Christmas and wedding anniversary video. My brothers and I got every birthday until 18 that she'd miss, milestone birthdays, Christmas, and big events like our own weddings and babies. After Dad remarried, I started to watch mine more at Christmas, and I'd maybe watch my birthday videos twice. My dad remarrying made me think of Mom more and made me miss her more. It felt more real that life had moved on without her, and Dad really fell in love with someone else. My dad watched his whenever his birthday or Christmas would happen too, but a year after he remarried, he turned 40, and she started making faces whenever one of us would watch a mom video. And whenever Dad would smile watching the video, she would look annoyed, pissed. After that, she suggested she could keep mine safe for me because I was so young, but I didn't trust her to do that. After 3 years of noticing this stuff, she told Dad the videos made her unhappy and uncomfortable, and she felt like an outsider at Christmas when he looked so in love with my mom. She also said she felt like the videos were a roadblock between her and us, me and my brothers. Dad compromised that he would watch his less, and she wouldn't say anything to us. I saw my dad struggle with that for years. I saw him go to watch one of Mom's videos and stop himself. Then my stepmom and I started fighting because I didn't want her to touch the discs the messages were recorded on. She was also upset when my brothers did backups of all the discs, so we'd always have the messages, even if the originals were broken. She told us we valued those more than we valued most people. Dad told her to leave us alone. But I stopped being as friendly with her as I was, and shut her out. I left her out of prom stuff last year that she wanted to do with me, and I always say no to hanging out with her. This brought us to therapy, and last week I spoke my mind and said I think she's incredibly selfish for making Dad feel bad about watching the videos Mom left for him. I said Mom was his first wife, the mother of his children, and if she really loved him, she'd want him to have them. But she doesn't like knowing she came second, and yet she joined the family anyway. I also mentioned why I never trusted her with mine. She was so upset because she had no idea I had picked up on and heard so much. She cried and said I didn't need to destroy her feelings like that. AITA? OP is not an AH for expressing her feelings and would be rated 0 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.